The Dixie Standards are coming thick and fast now. Here's the Bridge City Jazzmen's version of another favorite, Jada.
Hey all you night owls and believers out there, you're listening to 107.5 The Dark Hour. As always, I'm your host, James Blackbone, coming at you with another late night chapter of the latest twisted and creepy news, the only late night radio talk show in the greater Magic Falls area. If you've listened in before, then you know what I'm all about. But if you're new to the show, well then, welcome. For those of you that are new to the show, I'm an independent journalist who talks about the things that most people are too afraid to bring to the forefront. My goal is to shed light on the darkness and expose the monsters that live among us. I research and bring you all the latest news and stories of the strange, dark, and mysterious. The news that they don't want you to hear. After that, we'll open up the phone lines and get some thoughts and perhaps a good story from one of our listeners. If you had a chance to tune in a few weeks ago, you may remember a conversation I had with a man by the name of Mr. Thanatos. He's a writer who specializes in mostly stories of murder. However, he did specify that he is a lover of all interesting stories and would love to meet some of our wonderful audience and speak at his office located right here in Magic Falls. He's looking for any good writing material for his upcoming books. I just wanted to give all you believers out there an update on our meeting. Mr. Thanatos and I discussed many things, and we ended up coming to a wonderful agreement. If I send him some interesting personalities to interview at his office, then in turn, he will donate a large sum to the show to keep the lights on. I can't imagine finding any more interesting people out there than the audience of this show. If you're an avid listener, then I guarantee you'd be just the person Mr. Thanatos would like to talk to. The best part is that if he really likes you, then you'll have a special place in his next book. If any of you loyal fans have a great story to tell, feel free to reach out to me and we'll go from there. And now to the strange, dark, and mysterious news. Our first story tonight comes from the town of Seaside Bay in Oregon. I do apologize, but this is a long one, so stay with me. I was lucky enough to get an exclusive interview with a man in prison who claims that there are sea monsters roaming the waters near the coastal town. I called in some favors, and the warden of the prison allowed me to have a 10-minute uninterrupted phone call with the prisoner on the condition that the call not be recorded. Sorry guys, I did my best. The story I was told by authorities is that his fishing boat was found by the local Coast Guard after being reported missing for a few days. Most of the crew had been found deceased with multiple wounds around the head and neck areas that were consistent with large, sharp objects. The Coast Guard claims to have found the accused man hiding in the lower decks, covered in the crew's blood. He was allegedly holding a large bloody axe while humming a song. They thought he was in shock, but after they tried to communicate with him, he flew into a rage and tried to attack them. After a few minutes, he was subdued with a tranquilizer and apprehended. Luckily, none of the officers were injured during the incident. In our phone conversation, the man explained to me that he and a group of fishermen were out on one of their usual expeditions when he started hearing some kind of song coming from underneath the water. He reported the incident to the captain of the ship, and the captain told him he was just tired and needed to get some rest. He was very frustrated that this claim was not investigated. Just to be on the safe side, however, he would follow the captain's orders and take a quick nap, just to be sure. He went on to tell me that he woke up to a young, beautiful woman stroking his hair and humming the same song he'd heard coming from the water. The woman then lowered her head and whispered into his ear. She had the most beautiful voice that he'd ever heard. She told him that if he was willing to kill the other fishermen on the ship, that she would not only give herself to him, but she promised treasures and wealth beyond his wildest dreams. Moments later, the captain yelled his name from the deck, and the woman vanished before his very eyes. After heading up to the deck, he could still hear the song coming from the water, but he did his best to ignore it, since no one else seemed to hear it. He felt as though maybe he was having delusions. However, that theory did not last long. That night, he woke up to the sound of the same song he'd been hearing. He got up to investigate, and one of the crew members was holding a large axe. The man had blood on his shirt and a crazy look in his eye. And he told me that the man came rushing at him with the axe, and he turned around and ran as fast as he could to get to the upper deck. Once he got topside, there she was. This time, though, she wasn't the same beautiful woman that had been sitting by his bed. She'd transformed into a creature out of nightmares. He said her teeth were long and razor sharp, and her eyes had gone completely black. Long, sharp spikes were protruding from her back, and her legs, well, they weren't legs anymore. He described them as fins of a mermaid. The man with the axe followed him up to the deck, screaming at him, yelling, and I quote, "She's mine, she's all mine." The man then charged him with the axe at full speed, and, well, unfortunately, this is where our conversation ended. There was nothing but a dial tone on the other line. As you can imagine, I was utterly disappointed. I did, however, get enough information to form an opinion on the matter. Now, I am very confident this man is describing a siren from Greek mythology. The siren is a hybrid-like creature with the lower body of a fish or a mermaid and the upper body of a woman or a bird. They are said to lure sailors in with the sweetness of a beautiful song and then kill them or turn them against one another. Sadly, in this case, it may take some more time to find out the truth. The whole truth. I promise you, though, I will get another interview with this prisoner. Don't worry, believers. I vow to get the full story and share it with all of you. I'm afraid, however, that will have to be for another episode. If you're out there and you're listening, sir, I believe your story, and I want to help bring the truth to light. Hang in there. Now, our next story comes out of Devil's Lake, North Dakota. One of my inside sources in a certain branch of government, can't really say which, tells me that 3 young campers were found completely mutilated beyond recognition out in the forest near Devil's Lake. There were 2 females and 1 male that were apparently ripped to shreds by some kind of, animal or beast, possibly. My source tells me that there is much more to this story. Autopsies confirmed that the male and one of the females had been drugged with a powerful neurotoxin that keeps the victims fully conscious, but unable to move their extremities. The other woman was found torn apart, unfortunately, about 10 feet away from the other 2 victims. Oddly enough, an autopsy confirmed that she did not have the toxin in her body. What really makes this case strange is that my source tells me that the victims were torn apart by an animal with long, sharp claws. Or maybe sharp teeth? He said he wasn't sure, but it was a mess, and it didn't look like any kind of animal. He said that there were no animals in that area that could do or cause that much damage to the human body. He also told me that very large hoof prints had been found leading away from the victims till the trail ended near the lake. The most unusual thing about the prints is that whatever made them was apparently walking upright, as the prints were in a pattern of a 2-legged creature. I don't know about you, but I personally have never seen or heard of a goat or a horse that walks upright. Now, with all this data collected, I do have a hypothesis. I think it's possibly a leshy. Now, if you haven't heard, the leshy is a tutelary deity of the forest in pagan Slavic mythology. They are believed to be creatures in Europe, but from the details I've received from my contact, there's a chance one or more of them may have migrated to the cold regions of our country. The artifacts that were found near the lake and the victims' bodies very much match the Leshy lore. If this is the case, then the forest could be one of the most dangerous places in the United States. Please, people, heed my words. Stay away from that area. If this is a Leshy, this creature is beyond dangerous, and they will not show any mercy. My condolences go out to the families of these 3 victims. I do truly hope you can find peace someday. I'll update you all if I get any more information on the matter. And moving on to our final story of the night. Our final story comes out of New York State. Reports of a serial killer on the loose have been brought to my attention. A young man that volunteers for hospitals in the area has evaded capture by the authorities. The young man went missing recently while doing one of his routine checkups on an elderly patient. The volunteer never reported back to the hospital. When coworkers went to check on the patient that he was visiting, they were baffled when the address they had on file turned out to be non-existent. Through a source at the New York Police Department, I was able to attain the address and the name of the patient. The patient's last name was Samael, and his address number was 142. I did some cross-referencing and a little research. The name and the apartment number, well, I was a little bit terrified by the results. The name Samael comes from the Book of Enoch, an ancient Hebrew apocalyptic religious text. Samael is acknowledged as the chief of the tempters in 14:2 of the text. He was a rebellious archangel that is known by a few other names in Jewish lore, one name being the Angel of Death. Now, while looking into the disappearance of both men, investigators were unable to find any evidence that the elderly patient, just like his address, ever even existed. However, they did find quite the dark pattern in the volunteer's history. The young man would volunteer to help the sick and elderly, and he left a long trail of death in his wake. 25 elderly patients that he'd visited over the last 5 years had all been found deceased when he arrived to check on them. The police decided to go back and do autopsies. These autopsies have now confirmed that all the patients did not die of natural causes, but by asphyxia. They were strangled or suffocated. The investigation is ongoing, and I haven't been able to get the suspect's name yet, but the authorities believe the young man is on the run after his murderous spree. I, however, have a different theory on the matter. You know what I think? I think there's more to this story. I think that it's no coincidence that he went to visit Mr. Samael in apartment 142. I have no evidence to back this up, but my gut tells me that the volunteer is no longer in this realm. I believe he's most likely serving his punishment in the depths of hell for what he's done. Now, I can't prove this, but if I'm right, then he is exactly where he belongs. Remember, believers, evil is met with evil, and one day, we will all be judged. Now that does it for the strange, dark, and mysterious news. Now, let's open up the phone lines to the listeners. Sounds like we have a caller on the line. Hello. Hello, believer, you're on the air. What would you like to talk about this evening?
I'd like to talk about you, Mr. Blackbone.
Me? Well, I really don't think that's necessary.
No, Mr. Blackbone, it is very necessary.
You must have some kind of strange or mysterious story to tell to our listeners.
We've been watching and listening to you for quite some time now. Your little show here is really starting to become a thorn in our side, Mr. Blackbone. I'm only going to warn you one time. Cancel the show and stop putting your nose where it doesn't belong, or there will be repercussions.
Well, Mr. Whatever your name is, you can kindly take your warning and stick it directly where the sun don't shine. These people have a right to know the truth, and nothing will stop me from exposing all the evil that's out there. Now, if you'll get the hell off my phone line, I can get back to more important matters.
Your call, Mr. Blackbone. Don't say I didn't try to warn you.
Well, I'm sorry you had to hear that, listeners. I won't let someone come onto my show and threaten me like that. We all have the right to be heard, and they won't silence us. Don't worry. I won't be scared into turning off this microphone. Not today, not ever. Well, that was a short call, but I think I have some pressing matters to attend to. I just got a disturbing text message as well, and anyway, it's personal, so I'll have to call it a night early tonight, believers. I do apologize. I will keep you updated on all the news stories we talked about tonight, as well as that unusual phone call from, whoever that was, threatening us. I'll keep you posted. And don't worry, folks, I will not be getting off the air. I will continue to research and bring you all the bizarre and mysterious news that I can. They will continue to try and silence us, but we won't let that happen. This world we live in is full of monsters and creatures that live in the dark. I will continue on this journey to bring the dark to light, and no one will knock me off that path. All right, you night owls and believers out there. Thanks again for tuning into the show on this darkest of nights. As always, I'm your host, James Blackbone, and we'll see you next time here on... What was that? What the hell? Who are you? What do you want? How did you get in here? Oh my god. Oh my god, your face. What the fuck is wrong with your face? What are you... Please, no. No, I'll stop doing the show. Thank you for listening to another episode of Dark and Twisted Tales. This week's episode, You Are on the Air Part 2, was written and produced by William Bowser. This is our season finale for the first season of the show. We just want to thank everybody who listened to any of the episodes at all. We really appreciate it. And we're going to do some writing and try and come back with a second season. Learn from our mistakes and make better, higher quality episodes. So thank you again for listening, and we'd really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe. And thank you and good night.